Happy Resurrection Day. Good morning. It's Easter Sunday. I was fixing to walk out the door to go to church and realized I had a few minutes, but I wanted to just sit down here and give my heart for just say a few things that's on me. First of all, this is a very different Easter for me. This is the first time in the last 13 years as a senior pastor that this week was not crazy. This week was not so much pressure. I don't know what it is we put on ourselves. Religiously, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I know that's never been the will of God to have such pressure that pastors are just overwhelmed. You need a vacation after the week after Easter. And I realized what a perfectionist I was because I love the sheep. I love people. I wanted the church to look the best. I wanted the yard to look the best. I wanted my message to be the best. And it's funny because I'm not getting an Easter message this morning. And that's a strange feeling to have. But I went ahead this morning and just picked up the Bible and started reading about the crucifixion. And I read it in Luke. And it was just interesting to get to read it today from no other perspective other than I just wanted to just read it. And but I realized this thing is so much bigger than what we think. And I think as the closer we get to the coming of the Lord, the final of the counting down of time, that's what we're in right now. We're just in time. But around us is eternity. And around us is the kingdom. That's that spirit realm that's just right here. He said you can touch it. As Jesus walked around, they could literally touch him. And I read where after he come up out the grave, he said, touch me. Touch me. He goes, I'm not just a spirit. The spirit doesn't have flesh and bones. Isn't that interesting that after he raised from the dead, he had flesh and bones? And then he also ate in front of them. They're like, wait a minute, you're swallowing food to stop falling out of you. You're not just a ghost. But it's interesting, and I love the thought of us having a glorified body that can eat and be touched and all these things, but yet it can walk through a wall. He said you'll have the earthly body, but you'll also have the spirit. You'll have a spiritual body. Isn't that interesting? So there's so much more to this thing that I think we've even scratched the surface. But I wanted to bring one of the. I think one thing about what happened at the cross and the resurrection that people don't talk a lot about, and that is really the purpose that was from the beginning. The purpose was from the beginning. Of course, we know that when he created the earth, this sovereign God started with the end in mind. He said he already knew the end from the beginning. So there is a purpose in all this. And I don't think this was some sovereign God that created some humans and then in his image. And then he put them in a situation in the garden where he knew they was going to fall. And then they were going to have the death upon them, the curse of death. They would start dying. They would live in time now. There's that time thing. That's all death is. It's the counting down. Time is the counting down of this life. But there's an eternal realm around us, which just means it's outside time. It's a spirit realm. It's eternal. Everything's either eternal or it's temporal. Eternal or temporal. And so from the very beginning, he had some thoughts in mind. But he knew what Adam was going to do. And he already had the antidote. The Bible said the lamb was slain before the foundation of the earth. Before he ever put Adam in the garden, he already had the antidote. He already knew that he was going to rescue his creation. He knew they were fallible. He knew what they were going to do. And he knew he was going to save them. So I don't really know everything this life journey is about, but I know it's about knowing God in a deeper measure. It's to know his mercy. It's to know his love. And you could not know mercy if you didn't fail. If you didn't have justice, you would not have mercy. So he can show you that mercy is going to triumph over that. Yes, justice means I should pay for my sin. Justice means, I could even have the death penalty that Adam had earned us. But Jesus said, no, I already knew that was going to happen. But I've already had an antidote. And so this whole Easter thing is the antidote. It's the antidote. It's a thing that is bigger than what I think we know. But it wasn't just going to be, and I want to bring this aspect real fast. I'm going to try to wrap this up because I'm hoping I'll whet your appetite because I got more on this I want to teach you. If you want to have teaching time, is what this part is about, teaching time. But it come a point where he picked a man very shortly in the Bible in Genesis. I think it's about the 13th chapter, if I'm thinking right. But there was a man named Abraham, and he chose him. He had a plan. He chose him, and he said, I'm going to make you father of many nations. And as I'm going to make you the father of many nations, out of you and your seed, the children of Abraham, the seed of Abraham, that it would become the Hebrew. He was a Hebrew. They'd become the Israelites eventually. But he said, out of your seed, out of your family, I'm going to bless all nations, all races. That's the same word. And he said, go into all the world, go into all nations, Go and he told his apostles after he rose, going on nation, is now go to all races. Go to everybody. This is everybody now. It's not just certain people, because he was fixing to do something that people sometimes get confused about. He chose a people that he called this out of this Hebrew man, and he created what we have, the Israelites, and most of the Old Testament's about them. And it's focused on them, it's stories about them. In that whole journey, he gave them not only the promised land, but he also gave them 10 Commandments, and he also gave them the tabernacle where they could go in there and roll their sins away every year, give them a little lamb. They had to give them a process. And then he gave them prophets over the nations to lead, and judges and kings. And this whole thing was all directed to one people, though. It was directed to the children of Abraham, the seed of Abraham, that family. But what about the rest of the world? Is he kind of God? Like, well, I've got my little chosen. I got my little predestinated people here. And they're predestined. They're going to be predestined to go to heaven. The rest of everybody's just going to go to hell. I don't really care about those babies born, because they're already born for destruction. Well, some doctrine will teach you that. And so some doctrine will teach you, because of what Adam did, everybody's got a born with a default go to hell and burn forever jacket on. But they forget something. They forget today. They forget what Jesus did. The second Adam, he came and he said, by one man's disobedience, all were made unrighteous or made sinners. But by one man's obedience, all were made righteous. But we have a hard time receiving that. And we want to put everybody back to Adam instead of back to Jesus. He said, in Adam all die, but in Jesus all live. That's what he says. And there's so many scriptures that bring hope to this day, because this day was about bringing all things into oneness. It was not going to be just to the Jews anymore, but he said also to Gentiles. And so you could read the Ephesians 2 and 3, second chapter and third chapter. I want to wrap this up. But this is what it was about concerning me, because I'm not a Jew. Today is really special, because if it hadn't been for today, it's just been a Jew thing. It's just been to those special people. Those other people out there that was on the peripheral and all those stories, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hittites, the Philistines, all those people that seemed like God didn't care about. Oh, he cared. He even cared about those that was beaten on Noah's Ark. The Bible said when he was in the grave, he went back. He went back to the grave. He went back, and he even preached to those spirits that were in prison from the days of Noah. He cared about them. He's always been a whole world God. God so loved the world that he gave. And he keeps giving. He gave his only begotten son. He gave the world this gift of today. Let me read this, Paul talking to these Gentile people. He says, therefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who were called the uncircumcision by those that were called circumcision, the Jews, and by flesh made by hands. But in that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope, without God in this world. That's who you were. As Gentiles, that's who you were. But now in Christ, ye that were at times far off have been made nigh by the blood of Christ. He's our peace, who has made us both one, who's broken down the middle wall of partition between us, have abolished in his flesh even the enmity, the law of the commandments and the ordinances, to make himself one new man, so making peace, that he may reconcile both into God in one body by the cross. He made us all one. He came and preached peace to you that were far off, that's the Gentiles, and to them that were nigh, that was the Jews. That through him we both have access to one Spirit by the Father. But therefore now you're no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints of the household of God. That's you and I. He goes on down here. He says, this is a mystery. This is the mystery. People miss that. Paul talks a lot about the mystery. He said, he made known me the mystery. This is the third chapter, the first verse. But he said, here is the mystery, that the Gentiles will be fellow heirs by the same body and partakers of his promise in Christ by the gospel. And at verse 9, to make all men, say all men, see what's the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the world has been hidden God, but created all things by Jesus Christ. He had an eternal purpose. He had a spirit purpose. He had a purpose outside time. He said in the 11th verse that he would bring us together. This day is not just for the Jews, but because of what Jesus did, us Gentiles now are one. There's only one. He's a family God. He always cared about all the world. He was never a God that was, Peter, when he was sent to Cornelius, the first Gentile to receive the gospel recorded in the gospel in the Bible, he said in the 10th chapter of Acts, he said, I perceive that God is no respecter of person. We need to perceive today that God is no respecter of person, that he loves all people. He died for all people. He rose for all people, that we can become one in him, whether you're Jew or Gentile. He said, now there's no Jew nor Gentile. There's no male nor female. There's no bond or free, but we're all one in him. And he's no partial father. He doesn't show partiality to his children. He at one time had an elect people, but he elected them for one reason. They were elected so they could show the goodness of God to all nations, that all the nations would be blessed through the children of Israel, through those of the seed of Abraham. Today, we now have a new Adam. We have Jesus, who came and rectified everything that Adam did in the garden. God knew all along what Jesus was going to be sent. He was sent today to make this day possible. Hey, happy Easter, and I got to get to church.